Lynchburg, Virginia is a town steeped in history. Records of who and what were here go back as far as 700 years. It's not hard to find bits and pieces of history around this city. But in the heart of downtown Lynchburg lies a space that has been untouched for almost 60 years. The Academy of Music Theater at 600 Main Street has been bathed in darkness since 1958.
I think this is a cool thing that you all are getting in here to film the theater as it looks right now, because there's a certain beauty, I think, in the space. There's this sort of kind of ghostly quality to it right now that I'm gonna miss in many ways.
The past 4 decades have been a long struggle to revitalize the Academy Theater. In 1970, the organization Friends of the Academy was formed, and they purchased the theater in hopes of restoring it. Then, in 1985, the Academy of Music was purchased by Dr. Jerry Falwell, Sr. 9 years later, in 1994, the Friends of the Academy group was able to repossess the theater again.
My father was involved in an original group that was trying to restore the theater. And so as a child, we came in the front doors here in complete pitch black with flashlights, and I have a very distinct memory of moving around the space down here with flashlights.
Well, they closed it when I was 6 years old, so I never saw it, or if I did, I don't remember it. Back in the 1980s, I came to Lynchburg for a conference, and they actually showed us through the Academy and said, we're getting ready to restore this, and this is going to be a great project. So here I am in 2016, and we're still not quite there.
In 2003, the Academy of Music and the Lynchburg Fine Arts Center merged to form the Academy Center of the Arts. Since then, the Academy of Music Theater Restoration Project has finally begun to make some progress towards the goal of bringing the historic theater back to life.
This theater is an interesting time capsule for entertainment in America in a lot of ways. So it was built in 1905. Lynchburg was a very bustling, wealthy city, a lot of industry here.
In 1905, Lynchburg was booming. The city had recovered quicker from the Civil War than most parts of the South. By 1905, when the Academy opened, the city was thriving. There were huge shoe manufacturing companies here, steel, ironwork, banks, railroads. It was a pretty affluent community. And because of the rail lines, some of the famous acts from all over the country came through here, running between New York, Boston, Florida, and Lynchburg became sort of a stopover place.
The Academy of Music Theater attracted renowned talent, people like W.C. Handy and Ethel Barrymore. Huge actors such as Burt Lahr and Billy Burke, who would go on to star in The Wizard of Oz.
People like John Philip Sousa, the New York Philharmonic Orchestra, Will Rogers, and even the Three Stooges played at the Academy. And it really was a showcase for national and international talent.
This was also during the vaudeville era when we probably were at the height of American theater in terms of just volume. There was tons and tons of touring shows that moved all over the United States. So Lynchburg wanted entertainment to happen here. And this was one of eventually 10 theaters that were downtown. It ran from 2005 to 1911 and it burned in 11.
they decided to rebuild it and actually reopen in 1912, so it wasn't down for long. Mr. Harrell, who was in charge of the rebuild in 1911, he had designed theaters all over the country, was a real expert in getting the acoustics and the layout, and it really was one of the premier opera houses or performance halls really in the whole South.
The theater became a kind of second-rate movie theater up until 1958. And in 1958, what we were seeing happen here in Lynchburg was something that was happening across the United States. There was urban flight. And so we saw people leaving the urban center of the city and moving to the outskirts. The downtown area became more and more, I don't want to say abandoned, but less occupied. And so really from 58 until this point, it's been an empty space.
The Academy of Music Theater, the theater that we're restoring, that should be open in the fall of 2018. When it opens, that'll be the first time that it's ever been integrated. So when it opens, it'll be making history, its first day. Back in the Academy's heyday, it was a segregated space. There were 3 tiers, a bottom tier, a first balcony, and a second balcony. The second balcony originally was not there. It was the theater manager's apartment, but once there was a fire, and then they converted that space to be able to house patrons. So that became the balcony for African Americans here in Lynchburg. People had to use a separate entrance to go into the Academy and walk up a series of stairs to get all the way to the top. And they would have to go to a separate box office before they went to the second balcony.
And there were a lot of places in Lynchburg like that. I remember restaurants that would have what they called a colored or white entrance, colored and white water fountains. And the Academy had that same segregated thing going on with that separate entrance. The businesses wanted the funds that African Americans brought, but because of the segregation, they wanted them separate.
It's a part of history that we need to remember, and it's something we need to talk about. It's not the prettiest moment in time in our history. It's not something that we should be proud of, but it is something we should remember.
In 1865, Lee surrenders at Appomattox and the Civil War is over. The society that came out of that was the segregated South that I grew up in the 1950s and 60s and really into the early 70s. Lynchburg was a segregated society, but it's never just, there's never just a wall of, all whites here and all blacks there. I grew up here during the integration time. Lynchburg did not suffer the violence. I mean, there were no riots, but there was conflict and a lot of pain. And I think the culture and society we live in is still kind of working through some of the aftermath of that.
What's been going on in America and the world has always been going on to some degree. Many things that have gone on for years and decades have still not progressed enough to the point where people are feeling like they're being respected and having their rights, preserved. So for me, looking at the past is important because if you try to forget it or look over it, there's no way you can progress and make the world a better place for yourself or for others.
One of the things that's really important to us is that we're working very hard right now in terms of the Department of Historic Resources to preserve that original staircase. So that people can have the opportunity to move through that stairwell and know what it would have been like to have been an African American patron at that time and to have moved through that stairwell.
The box office worker, the ticket taker for African Americans, her name was Lottie Payne Stratton. She lived in the area, she was a dedicated worker, and she's a very important part of the history of the Academy here. And we actually still have the chair that she sat in the box office.
And our hope is on that second balcony too to create some sort of museum experience that talks a little bit about segregation in the South, particularly in theaters.
Reliving that and trying to recapture that so that new generations can know how far we've come, but yet how far we have yet to go. So I'm really excited for that, for the space, and hopefully that can bring new people in a different way beyond just showing, a theater production. The space can be a lot of various things. It will be an art space, but it can be anything that the community wants it to be.
Though the Academy of Music Theater has been frozen in time, the city around it is constantly evolving. Suburbanization in the 50s brought people out of the downtown area, but in the past decade or so, more and more people have been coming back into the city center, giving downtown Lynchburg the fire it needs to come back to life again.
When I left Lynchburg in 1981 and moved to Northern Virginia, downtown was pretty dead. There were, a few businesses, but a lot of vacant buildings. Not much energy and didn't see any on the horizon. But I've always loved Lynchburg. I was born here.
Here at the organization, that we feel that the theater in many ways has been symbolic and metaphoric of the city and downtown's revitalization on the whole. We have something that is really beautiful. Many parts of it kind of untouched and have been left for a really long time. And there's this exciting opportunity to revitalize it, to bring it back to life, and really bring something of cultural significance back. And downtown is in a really exciting spot.
When these old tobacco warehouses and shoe warehouses are reborn as restaurants, hotels, places people live, especially young people, I think it's exciting, and I've watched that happen in Northern Virginia and Alexandria and DC. Then I worked in Richmond for 10 years and saw it happen there. So Lynchburg is on that path. The Bluff Walk, the Academy Theater, even our Monument Terrace, our historic stairs out front. And we've got the backdrop of the Blue Ridge Mountains and the river flowing through, but fairly low cost of living, good place to get educated. I think Lynchburg is really on the rise.
I hope downtown continues to improve. We're getting new restaurants, it seems like every month or so. So that's a great development. And I hope that we can be more diverse. I hope we can get more businesses down in Lynchburg. I hope we can make it more lively and energetic. And I think having the Academy and having the historic theater restored in 2018, that'll be a big part of that. But I think there's a narrative that there's nothing to do in Lynchburg, and that Lynchburg's a boring place. And I think hopefully we can change that narrative to drive new people in here and also keep people, especially college students, in the area to keep building the community that we already have here.
Our contractor and our architects understand how important this is to the community. They're a part of the community here too. They live here, they work here. And so this has really been a collaborative project getting this done. And everybody's been working really hard to make sure that the project stays within scope, that it's reasonable in cost and price. It's also really exciting to see how both old architecture and theater needs are coming together with new.
For me personally, I'm not from Lynchburg, I'm from Richmond, but I have family history here in Lynchburg. So being here at the Academy and looking at the community that we have present, it's really important to me that we engage them and try to include people as much as possible. The property right here, this is really something that sticks out to me over my days here. And the arts can really have a prolonged and systemic impact on individuals with prolonged involvement. And that's really why I'm back here, because I feel invested in this community. This community has really kind of created me to a certain extent. I went to school here at Randolph College, so I have really kind of a personal connection with the people here, I feel like.
Well, when it opens in fall of 2018, it's going to create about 200 nights of activity out of the year. There's something going to be happening here, which means it's going to help retail, it's going to help restaurants, it's going to help public safety. We're going to have tons and tons of people in and out of downtown, in and around the facility. So that's obviously going to be something that's going to be really big.
But I think it's the heart of the community. Lynchburg's a big tent. We've got all the colleges, universities, nuclear industry, hospitals, and all of those are wonderful, but you want your downtown as sort of the heart and the anchor of that.
I mean, we know that the future is city dwelling. We know that. We know that urban living is the future. And we have such an exciting set of spaces here downtown. And this is really part of a much bigger picture. And so it's an exciting time to be a part of it.